and welcome! Today we are taking a look at the revamped Dart Zone Max Omnia Pro. If you don't know or need a recap, the Omnia Pro launched last summer, but multiple people noticed that their blasters were firing a bit to the right. Definitely some more than others. Certain people were reporting no issues, and in my case, my blaster is firing a little bit to the right, but not as significantly as some other people were reporting. So that was the main thing, but if you watched my original review, my biggest complaint about the blaster was the delayed trigger response. And from what I've heard, this new version will have a faster trigger response. If that is the case, that'll be super cool. Now, Dart Zone did send me this blaster, but not because I am a YouTuber, but because I bought a Generation 1 Omnia Pro. If you bought a Generation 1 Omnia Pro and you're unhappy with the performance, definitely reach out to Dart Zone and they should send you a brand new model. If we look at the old Generation 1 Omnia Pro box, how are we going to tell it apart from the new Generation 2 version? While there are a couple minor differences on this box, the big one and the one that you really have to watch for is that the original Generation 1 models will be claiming 125 feet, while the Generation 2 models will be claiming 150. That's the easiest way to tell these apart from the box. With the actual blasters side by side, what are the noticeable differences? Cosmetically, I think they are the exact same. The biggest differences that you'll notice will be in the overall feeling of the blaster and how it performs. One minor thing that they addressed was actually this stock. This is the original version, and apparently if you pull hard enough backwards, it will come off. It's super solid in the position that matters most, but because there is a sling mount back here, that is kind of an issue. The new version has a heavier spring back here and much stronger retention. As far as the tolerances, they mostly feel very similar, but there are a couple that stick out. This one is more negative, but I have noticed that the jam door on the new Gen 2 version is much harder to open. I'm not sure why that is exactly, but it's just much harder to manipulate. Not a deal breaker, just pointing that out. To me, the rev switch on the new version feels a bit clickier, and the trigger pull's weight as well as its pull length have been changed. The original Omnia has a very light trigger pull and it looks something like this, while the Gen 2 version has a much heavier trigger pull as well as a shorter trigger pull. And most won't notice this, but apparently they upgraded the switches from 5 amps to 10 amps. Besides that, it is the same blaster. I really like the Omnia's balance, the build quality is the same fantastic build quality, and this one is supposed to fire straighter. But what I'm also very curious about is the trigger response time, so let's compare the two and see if this one really seems improved. Here is the Generation 1 version of Omnia Pro. We are going to set it to single fire and fire a couple shots. And here is the Generation 2 Omnia Pro, also set to single fire, and let's do a couple of shots. I don't know. To me, it's very hard to tell which one seems faster. This sure doesn't seem significantly better. Now let's move to 3-round burst. This is the original Generation 1 Omnia Pro. And here is the Generation 2 Omnia Pro. Again, maybe this one seems a little bit faster, but I don't notice any super significant upgrade. Now, these are supposed to fire 7 darts a second, and I definitely think they do. So I have 7 darts loaded up, and let's fire them both in full auto, starting with the Generation 1 Omnia Pro. Now the Generation 2. To me, the full auto seems pretty much exactly the same, which is good because it is very impressive. So here I have the Generation 2 Omnia Pro. Now I'm just going to take some shots to make sure we are firing straight. We are in single fire. Yeah, while my original was firing a little bit to the right, this one definitely has eliminated that problem. Now I'm going to fire a couple shots in 3-round burst and then full auto. While the 3-round burst is still noticeably delayed, that full auto is absolutely awesome. It's also worth noting that when you are in the full auto mode, your response time is much better. To me, it seems like it would be a lot more effective just keeping it in full auto and controlling your fire. Now let's take this thing outside, put it over the chronograph, and compare the average to the old Omnia Pro. Here we are outside with the Generation 2 Omnia Pro. We will be firing the included max ruby darts. For this test, we'll use single fire. 159, 156, 158, 160, 158, and 160. For my testing, here's the average from the Generation 1 Omnia Pro, and here's the average from this new Generation 2 version. So in my testing, the Generation 2 version is hitting a little bit harder, but there are other factors to consider, so I would say they hit about the same. We only have 4 darts left, but let's just full auto these things downrange. This thing really does get some pretty fantastic performance. Now let's go back inside and I'm going to share my final thoughts on the Generation 2 Omnia Pro. What are my final thoughts on the Generation 2 Omnia Pro? So if we ignore the Omnia as a whole for a moment and just talk about the improvements, I am pretty happy. Obviously, the most glaring, annoying thing about the Omnia was the fact that it was firing a bit to the right. Again, some more than others. However, the fact that it has been completely eliminated in this new model is fantastic. For the majority of people, I think that complaint trumped all the other ones. I really like the fact that they made a couple little upgrades that people weren't even asking for, like increasing from a 5 amp to a 10 amp switch, as well as making the stock more secure. So all that is super cool, but unfortunately, I'm not seeing a huge difference in the trigger response time. Yeah, they did shorten the trigger pull, but as far as the actual response, it seems maybe a little bit quicker, but not massively. From my demonstrations, you can come up with your own verdict. However, I just personally don't see a huge change. But like I said in my original review, this blaster shines most in full auto. In fact, besides something like the Worker Phoenix 2.0, nothing really comes close to having this rate of fire with this amount of power. And you're all ready to go out of the box. Rechargeable battery, 2 magazines, and enough darts to fill them. I think if we ignore the poor select fire and just look at it like an extra bonus gimmick of sorts, and just look at the full auto feature, this blaster is a great value for $90. And this may age poorly, but right now you can buy this blaster from Walmart.com for $60. Keep in mind, something like the Elite Hyperfire from 2016 retailed at $50. That blaster fires at 70 FPS, bogs down in full auto, and you have to go out and buy D batteries for it. So it's insane that you can buy a blaster like the Omnia Pro with this level of quality for that price. And I'm not gonna lie, I really do like DartZone as a company and really appreciate them taking care of the people who enjoy their blasters. Again, if you bought a Generation 1 Omnia Pro, reach out to DartZone and they'll send you a brand new one completely free. By the way, wow, these things are well balanced and would be awesome to dual wield. Those were my thoughts on the Generation 2 DartZone Max Omnia Pro. I hope this video answered some of your questions, and if it didn't, definitely let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to answer whatever other questions you might have. Thank you very much for watching, subscribe for more, and happy blasting.